Perfect. Great. So firstly, what are ethics and what is a dilemma? So ethics, I'll get into the description of a bit later, but what you need to know is that by the end of this lesson, I want you to have a model for handling ethical dilemmas and a tool for screening, right? How do you know how to manage an ethical dilemma? You guys are very lucky. You're actually working through a section of my thesis with me today, in which we discuss ethics and how it's managed. We're also going to be looking at what are common ethical problems. So what type of situations arise for social workers where ethics are important? You're going to have to take some notes because there are modules that you need to learn. Right, so number one, what is an ethic? Shakir, can you tell us what is ethics? What is an ethic? All right.
Principles,
Oh, sorry, yes, it's a principle.
principles, models by which we function, codes.
It's a code, it's a rule that we create, right? Where we say, I will do this, or I won't do that. That's an ethic.
Correct.
Okay. All right. What's a dilemma? Let's check. Bonnie, can you tell me what's a dilemma? When you say you have a dilemma, what does that mean?
It's more of a challenge. I'll say a challenge or a drama.
100%. So the ethics are based in your values, and what you value you sort of try and protect. When you have two ethics that clash with each other, you have what's called an ethical dilemma. And this very often happens within the social workspace. So an ethical dilemma is defined as the problematic situation in which ethical principles conflict. All right. So an ethical dilemma is when you're faced with two ethics that are conflicting with each other, and you need to decide which ones work hand in hand or which one takes precedence over which other one. All right. So the goal of resolving an ethical dilemma is that a decision must be made that results in the best, most ethical course of action. And the only way to discover that is by working through a very set process. So Corey, and Callanan, they developed a sequence, a model, and they said that the number one tool for solving an ethical dilemma is to identify the problem, gather information from as many perspectives as possible, identify the issues, determine the core principles and what are the competing issues, review your code of ethics, review the laws, consult with colleagues, consider courses of action, examine the consequences, and then make your decision. All right, so there's quite a few steps there. Number one, you're identifying the problem. Number two, you're identifying what's the core of the problem, what's the issues. Then once you have the problem in line, you go to your code of ethics, right? So if you're registered with the Health Council, for example, they'll have codes of ethics that you follow, and you look at what must I do in this situation. Then you look at the laws. What does the law require that I do in the situation? Once you have a picture of it, you go to your colleagues like Charlotte, who goes to her social worker, and she says, what about this? What about that? That's it. You're speaking to colleagues and you're trying to get feedback. And that's why supervision is very important within the social work space as such. Once you have all of their feedback, then you start considering what are the options, what are the decisions we can make, and then you handle it. What's quite important is that you don't need to follow all these steps in this order, but each step is important, right? As a social worker, auxiliary social worker within this field, you need to make sure that you document each step of your decision-making process, right? Because you are still responsible for your own behavior and your own decision. So you are responsible for the decision you reached. And the only way you can defend your decision is by showing us what steps you took to reach that decision, right? Ethical dilemmas are difficult. They're hard. That's why they're called dilemmas, right? The other issue that very often arises within healthcare is that we don't seek enough support. We don't ask enough of our colleagues to assist us in solving problems. And this is a mindset I want you to get out of. You don't need to solve the problem alone, right? You alone need to keep confidentiality, but you can get support in solving problems. All right. So let's look at some basic universal ethics. All right. So this comes from the Dolgoff study, right, in which he develops a hierarchy of ethical principles. So he said, they said, actually, it's a two-person research. They said that number one, protection of life is the most important ethical right. After that, equality. After that, autonomy. After that, the least harm, doing the least harm, then quality of life, then privacy, then truthfulness. All right, so when you're stuck, according to them, in a dilemma that is between life and privacy, the right solution be the one that supports life as the answer. Does that make sense, what I'm saying so far?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that does make sense. When it comes to equality versus quality of life, rather have people be treated equally before you consider making somebody's life better than somebody else's, right? So it's quite a difficult hierarchy to follow. But this sort of is their hierarchy of needs. And we're going to play around with different scenarios in when this happens. So let's look at the first ethical right. And this is the ethical right to life, right? So when a dilemma includes life or death, one should choose the action that saves a life. According to the study, at all times, you should choose life. It almost seems like a no-brainer, but it's important that it is said so verbatim. So what's an example of this? And this is quite relevant to the South African population at the moment. And Elizabeth, I see you've joined us, and I want you to give some feedback into this. All right. So I'm going to enter into a bit of a discussion with you and with the rest of the group. So let's say, for example, that a certain big world power has decided that they are going to cut HIV funding to South Africa. All right. As is the case at the moment. Let's say that you're a social worker in this community and the organization that is providing the ARVs, right, they have the right to decide, right, what medical things that they will cover and not cover, right? 100%. That is a right they have, but also people have the right to life, and that is through the ARVs, right? So there's an ethical dilemma for you, is how far do you push it and what happens in that case? So they stop covering drugs, right? What is the correct response to that? Elizabeth, Elizabeth, would you like to cover us a little bit on that? Like, what are different responses a social worker can have when looking at a situation like this?
Okay, remember, social workers are there to advocate for that line. So the only better way, or maybe one of the things that could be done, is just to come up with the programs or campaigns to advocate for people, to say that in order for these people to live, since they do have rights to live, we need to come up with a campaign in order to fight against the whatever problems that might have encountered that would cause them not to receive the medication that they're supposed to receive.
100%. That's exactly it. Yes, sorry.
Coming with that campaign to fight against US to fund South Africa so that we can have medication.
100%. So very often in this type of situation, again, you have two rights: the right that I can choose who I support, and the right that says that the duty to life is quite important. And in this case, Elizabeth is completely right. In this case, you would, right, see that the client's right to life takes precedence over the health management organization's right to decide what medical costs it will cover. Therefore, you need to then go into advocacy as the proper ethical response. All right, let's go on to something that's slightly more blurry, right? And I'm going to ask you to give me an example of this in this matter. People have the ethical right to equality. What this means is that people should be treated fairly and equally. Right? A social worker should honor this principle except in life or death cases. So obviously, when it's between life and equality, you choose life. When it's equality and anything below it, you have to choose equality. Give me an example of when you would choose equality over one of the rights below it. So let's open up the list of rights. There we are. They're on your screen. Let's see who's next on my list. I have Jackie Barker. Can you give me an example of that?
I knew you were going to pick on me, and I have no idea.
An easy one to go into. Look at equality and being treated fairly, everybody treated the same with regards to privacy. Think of your children.
Nick, can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. So I'm asking you to think of a time when the right to equality will take precedence over the right to autonomy, not causing harm, quality of life, privacy, or truthfulness. Was it an unfair example?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Let's go into it. Right. So here's an example. A food bank is not reaching everybody who's eligible. Right. But there's not enough for all. The people already receiving the food depend on it for life. Right. Usually you would work to stretch it to treat all eligible equally. Right. But it would not come at the cost of depriving people of food whose life depends on it. Are you seeing the example? Right. So our goal would be to get everybody less food, but as many people as possible benefit from the food. But if the food amount that they're getting from the food bank or the food program in your community, right, is not enough for them to live on, right, then the right to life trumps that right. Okay, Jackie, I see you raised your hand.
So can I ask, so in that scenario, let's say you've got this food bank and some people are getting a lot of food and some people are getting no food. Would that be a equality trumps quality of life? Quality of life. So those people can't eat cake, but everybody does get to have bread and milk.
100%. So look at that. So quality of life is where you have a few people getting a whole load of food from the food bank, right? Whereas others do not have it. So equality is higher up on that hierarchy than quality of life. So we would rather than everybody have a bit less in order to be treated equally. I want you to understand with ethics, as well as ethical dilemmas, the ethical answer is not necessarily the emotional answer, right? It is not necessarily what makes the most sense to us emotionally. It is rather what is the hierarchy that we fall into when looking at decision making. So you've summarized that quite well. All right, now we start getting into some of the fluffier ethics and rights, such as the right to autonomy. People have the right to make their own decisions and to determine themselves, self-determination, right? Only your right to survive and your right to equal treatment takes place over this. Oh, I've gone very far ahead of myself. All right. Can you give me an example? Can anybody give me an example of when that would come to play? Jackie Barker, who is now overcompensating for not getting the previous answer, but please proceed.
The equality one is the hardest. Oh my word. Okay, so autonomy, like if someone wants to kill themselves, you would take away that right to make their own decision and right to self-determination, because you would get them medically boarded because their right to life is more important.
Exactly that. So that's quite an extreme example of it. That's exactly it. So if it comes to somebody making decisions or saving their lives and surviving, you would make the decision that includes survival and equality as more important than that. Shakir, I see you've got feedback for me.
A person wants to do drugs. It's his right to do drugs. But if he's going to be a nuisance to himself, going to kill himself, you have the right to take him away.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Pedro, give me some feedback. Yeah, I see you just returned the word abortion on the group. Let's get into it.
Yes, I think abortion also speaks to the right to autonomy, whereas women are able to make their own decisions as to their bodies.
Okay, so women get to make the decision about their bodies, but then a very tricky question then arises, which is if you go to the hierarchy of rights, right, you have life, equality, then autonomy. So if somebody says that the right to life is more important than the right to autonomy in the abortion case, how would you work your way around that?
Sure. Well, I think there'll always be that debate of the right to life when it comes to an unborn child. So I think it would depend on a person's own philosophy and their own belief system in that sense. But if you're leaning towards the right to life, or if you're leaning towards the baby being alive when unborn, that would take precedence over autonomy, and abortion would not be acceptable in your views there. But if you do not agree with that, and then you would take autonomy as a more important right in that instance.
That's a very, very safe answer. I love it. All right. So one thing I want you to understand as we get deeper into ethics is this, right? One of the fundamental rules of ethics is I cannot create ethics for two other parties. All right. Does that make sense? So I cannot compare the right of party A and therefore force party B to do something as me being the third party to this equation. All right. Keep that in the back of your heads. We're not going to delve into it now. We'll do it in more deeper ethic classes. But that's quite a principle to keep in mind. Also, is the viewer, the seeing, and the seen, and how they play into ethics, right? All right. So people have the right to create to the least harm, right? And I think let's try and engage Elizabeth again in on this. Elizabeth, are you with us? I want you to please explain the concept of creating the least harm in intervention. And what does that mean for a social worker from a social work perspective?
Please repeat your question, Nick.
So look at the concept of, so when we sign up for the HPCSA or for SARSWIP, one of the pledges we take is to create the least harm. All right.
Yes.
The vow we actually take is to create no harm. So what is that idea in practice? the least harm? How do you measure it? What's an example where you have to make a decision of the least harm in social work practice or in your life experience as a social worker? Think of maybe children being taken away from their parents, something like that, where both are not great, but you have to pick one.
Okay, in a situation like that one, I would give an example with, let me think. In a case where you are removing the children from the family, I would say maybe the thing that you could do is just to make sure that you provide support and counseling for during that space of time so that the parents can understand. You explain everything to the parents and provide support and counseling for that specific period of time so that the parents can understand that at this present moment, this must be done, but that doesn't automatically mean the children are going to be taken away from them forever.
Yeah. So the right to be protected from injury comes into play there.
Yes.
And you as a social worker very often have to make a very tough decision between two things which aren't necessarily either great for the person, right? Either they have to go to foster care and lose their family or stay in the family and suffer some other form of suffering. And you need to make that decision. And that's when you go back to the hierarchy, right? And you say, okay, what is at risk here and what will cause the least harm? Right? So ethics assumes that harm will be caused to a degree, and we're willing to cause some harm if it is utterly necessary and we can prove that it is the least harm. All right. Now I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to split you into two groups. And we're going to work through this very quickly, just for 5 minutes. All right, a community decides to build a recreation center. Okay, so you're now in this community, the community is building a rec center. Sorry. There are two properties available. One is an open 3-acre lot, so it's a huge property that can influence the community very well. Lots of people can benefit from these programs. You can run multiple programs on it, right? But it is also used by youth for sports. The other is very small and an abandoned warehouse. All right. And the principle suggests that we should use, oh, no, right? And you now need to come up with a solution. Do you use the bigger property at the cost of the youth sporting section? Or do you use a smaller property, reach less people, right, and use the abandoned warehouse? I'm going to split you into two groups, right? And I want you to sort of debate it out amongst yourselves. Which property would you choose using the hierarchy and the screening process for ethical dilemmas? Do we understand the problem?
Yes.
Well, I really hope we do, because you guys are going to be put into rooms right now to discuss it and then select a person to come speak to me. There'll be 3 per room. I want arguments for both sides. Let's go. Lisbeth, Charlotte, Pedro, Bonnie, Jackie, Shakir. Okay, perfect. Opening the rooms now. Please join and let's see what comes up from there. God. Charlotte, you need to join the group.
Yeah.
Nick,
Hello.
Elizabeth and I don't even have an answer for this actually.
Okay, that's fine. Let me explain it one more time.
Yeah, I think so, please.
All right. Let's just check that everybody is in. Let the breakout rooms just end. It is quite a challenge.
I don't think so. I don't understand it.
Okay, so I'll explain it to you again now.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, so the oh wait, I've gone very far ahead. Let me just go back. Sorry, let me just go back for a second. Oh no, no. Sorry, let me just find myself again. Okay. We are there. All right, so The problem you had to solve was a community has decided to build a recreation center to do interventions for the residents. You have 2 properties to choose from. One of them is a huge complex, all right? In it, you can run all sorts of programs for the community, right? But if you choose to put the community center there, the youth sports program and the youth intervention program will not be able to take place. In the second property, you have a small property, so you can't run many community intervention programs at all from there, but the youth complex is then saved. Which property do you choose? Does that make sense? As a question. Pedro, you understand it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, Safia, tell me, what did your group decide and what happened there?
Shakir, can I explain?
Okay.
Okay, I didn't understand the question in that manner. Choose one of
Okay.
the 2. But I understood it as we're getting a warehouse and we're getting the
No, you get one.
ground.
You get one.
Because we were all in agreement in our group that we're gonna rent it out for skills development, and from the rent,
Have you gone a step further?
yes, from there we're going to make a recreational center and sports center for the kids.
Okay, so you guys have already planned out the program based
Yeah,
on
we
it.
even spoke to the architecture and everything.
Perfect. Perfect. Pedro, based on the above, what do you, now that you've heard the problem differently, what solution would you choose?
So I think if I can just understand this better, so we would choose an option that would cause less injury to the community, but still be most effective.
Mhm.
All right, so I think then in that sense, a warehouse, the abandoned warehouse would be most effective.
Okay, so the principle of ethics says that the abandoned warehouse, although smaller and can reach less people, will do the least harm to the community as it stands, and therefore you would do the warehouse instead of the bigger community center. However, ethically speaking, there are always a set of other considerations. All right, so you would look at the location, you'd look at what do the youth think, etc., etc. Let's get on to the next human right or the next ethical right that people have. People have the right to quality of life, the right to seek and attain a better quality of life. Only people's right to survive and equal treatment and least harm takes precedence over this right. Okay? So let's look at this problem. A program offers a single parent job training, right? So there's a program, they do job training for single parents. Public assistance is ended when they complete the program. So they no longer qualify for a grant when they complete the program. What then arises if the parents are not becoming employed because there are no jobs? Should the program be discontinued? Give you a second to read through that again. So there's a program that offers single parents job training. The goal, though, is that when you finish job training, you don't get social grants anymore. What if people cannot get employed because there are no jobs? Should the program continue or be discontinued? Jackie.
So I think it's I think that they should rather have a thing of when you're enrolled in the program, you get the grant. As soon as you get a job, then the grant stops. Not when you finish the program, but rather when proof of employment is provided, then you stop getting the grant. I don't think the program should be discontinued. I think there should be modified rules around the grants giving.
Okay, all right. Bunny, what is your thought on this? If you had to make the decision of continuing the program or dropping the program, what decision would you make? Oh. Hello. Okay, let's move on to the next basic ethical right. People have the right to privacy and confidentiality. Everyone has the right to not have their private information made public. Right. This, we don't need an example for that. People finally have the ethical right to know the truth and to have accurate information. Right? So here's the question for them. Elizabeth, you will have to answer this for us as the social worker in the room, as the adult social worker in the room. Must the social worker show clients any and all documentation concerning them? Yes or no, and why?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, in order to remain truthfulness, as long as those documents are concerning them, if there are documents that are coming from them, the clients do have right to see those documents, unless if due to confidentiality, which was the previous one, unless if there's document that the client is not supposed to see from that file. But in order to remain truthful and transparent, the clients do have rights to see the documents that are from concerning them.
Yeah. So do you see what happened there? When Elizabeth answered the question, she referred to the previous ethical right, which was confidentiality. And she said, as long as confidentiality is not crossed, then the right to truthfulness can stand. Right? And that's exactly the system we're following here. Right? If, for example, showing a client or client having access to documents would mean that somebody's life is at risk, they would not have access to those documents because the right to life is more important than the right to truthfulness and openness and confidentiality. Does that make sense? Are you starting to see how the picture comes together when we're looking at ethical decision making? I hope so. All right, let's get into a more complicated scenario. We've done a few play ones. Now we've got a proper one. The management team of a rural social services board has learned that its funding has been cut in half for the next 3-year budget cycle. Right? So you're part of this board. Your funding has been cut now in half for 3 years. The agency has provided daycare for working parents, domestic violence shelters, sex education and contraception counseling for teens, and foreign adoptions program. All right, so these are the services that the center is providing, right? How do you handle the budget cuts using the screen that we did earlier, this one? How do you handle the budget cuts using the screen that we did earlier? So let's have a bit of a think tank quickly. Who wants to hazard a guess?
I will try.
Okay, perfect.
I would think that with the right to life being number one, to remove the domestic violence shelter would automatically put lives in danger. So that one absolutely cannot be cut. And so I think number one would be that we work. Yeah, I would. Yeah, let me stop there. But I
Okay,
think
so
domestic violence shelter if the right is.
Okay, so when we look at this hierarchy of, right, you're putting domestic shelter into life there, right? Okay, and therefore that one must be saved and cut last. All right. Sophia, take us through the next step. Which one would you prioritize next?
Care for working parents.
Okay, why? Let's see if Shakira can answer that question for you also.
She's
Sorry, I can't hear you.
working parents to stand
Okay, I've lost you. I've lost you completely there.
here.
Okay, so
You still
we'll.
can't hear me?
No, we're just hearing static at the moment.
Hello.
No,
Hi.
it sounds terrible. Yes, Bonnie. Hit me.
Um,
What's the next program that you would keep?
okay, you kind of moved. Yes.
Sorry, there we are.
Thank you. I will rather I'll start with taking out the daycare for working parents.
Okay,
Yes,
why?
because they are working, they can afford to pay a private crèche or nursery, something like that. And I will keep the sex education
Mm.
and exclude the contraceptive counseling for teens, because I think if we do have this center for sex education and educate them enough not to have sex while they are teenagers, then it will help us in terms of saving funds and not getting the contraceptives.
Okay.
Which
Okay. So you're saying we move it towards more education.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split you guys into two groups again. And you see these programs over here. You need to decide in which order will you shut them down based on this hierarchy of ethics. So I'm going to split you into two groups now. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. In which order would you shut down the programs based on that group there? I'm opening all the rooms now so you can join in. There will be 3 rooms assigned to room 1, and I'm going to assign you to room 2, Bonnie. Okay, let's go.
Nick,
Hello.
which programs are we fitting into this?
So you need to decide which funding you would cut, in which order would you cut the funding of these programs, which are listed in the second paragraph.
Okay.
Charlotte, I need you to join the group. You need to join the group. All right, welcome back. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Let us go through it very quickly, and then we're going to wrap up the lesson for the day. So there's the list of programs again. We were split into two groups. Group 1, give me your feedback. The group that had Bonnie in it. Which group was that?
Our group.
Okay, perfect. Give me back the feedback there. How did you rank the programs that you were going to cut in which order?
We were in disagreement.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So I strongly feel that obviously domestic violence, number 1, stays. The second one would be, for me, would be the parents' daycare. The third one would be foreign adoption. And the last two, that is contraceptive and sex education, can be done away with.
Okay,
So-
so in the order of removal, the first one you would remove is contraceptive care and sex
Yeah.
education.
Yes.
Then you would cut funding to foreign adoption.
Yes, then maybe, yeah. But that's like dead in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at them in order of if you had to cut funding to each program, in which order would you cut it?
Yes.
Okay. What made you choose that specific selection? Based on the
Okay.
rights, the ethical rights people, what made you choose it?
So domestic violence is common sense, right? That the guy can kill or the girl can kill, whatever it is. We understand that. That stays. The
Mhm.
problem is there's a difference. Some parents can afford daycare, some parents can't afford daycare, but they need to be working in order to keep your entire economy moving.
Mhm.
So if you're going to cut daycare, it's going to have an effect, a ripple effect, where the parents are now going to be late for work because they have to drop at the daycare. They can't afford this. Then they're getting a loan here, and a whole lot of chaos can come through that. So that is why I would say keep the daycare, keep your employees happy, right? And your business will flourish. The third one, the foreign adoption, I'm probably not understanding it completely, but when you're adopting someone, you're actually finding place for that person. And my argument with regards to getting rid of sex education and prevention, they are both already taught to children at school level from grade 8, 9, 10, 11. And you are just repeating it. Like it's like having tuition for maths. And I gave this example, having tuition for maths when you can actually pay attention in class and get exactly what the teacher is saying. So the actual focus should be on getting to the teachers at school rather than having a complete program away from school. That was my argument. I could be wrong. Or it
Okay,
could
so
just,
you said there was disagreement in your group.
yes, not like
Okay.
fighting this.
No, I assume you guys didn't insult each other too much. All right, what was the disagreement? Who disagreed with you? Who dissented in that group? Who disagreed with you?
Both of them, Bonnie and
Okay, so which order, Bonnie, would you put it in? What's the first program you would cut and why? Or somebody else who was in that group can answer.
Jackie.
Jackie?
So hi, yeah.
Yes.
So the feeling was clearly the sex education is not working. And since we have such a high rate of teenage pregnancies and things like that. So clearly, as much as we say it's being taught in schools, it clearly is not enough for this massive crisis that our country faces. So I think the feeling, I can't speak for Bonnie. The feeling was that the most important is obviously the domestic violence. We were all in agreement with that. But I think Bonnie and I both agreed that the sex education should be second, working parents should be third, and foreign adoption should be last.
Okay. Okay.
Bonnie, if
Based
you're there,
on-
you can back me up.
Did you use the hierarchy?
You are correct.
Okay, Bonnie seems to have agreed with you there. Okay, that's an interesting use of the hierarchy. Pedro was in the other group, yes, with Charlotte. What was the feedback of that group? In which order would you cut the programs based on the hierarchy of ethics that you would change?
So we would first cut the foreign adoption program.
Why?
Because that, well, practically speaking, but also I'll get to the hierarchy as well. But practically speaking, there are already many other systems in place, like the foster care systems, local adoption systems in place. So we reasoned that it would cause the least harm to cut this program out. The second one that we decided was the daycare center.
Yeah.
And we decided that because sex education is the right to autonomy, which is more important than that of quality of life. So we would keep sex education above that of the daycare center, and then domestic violence would be the last one to cut out.
Okay, and did everybody in that group agree with that answer?
I think so, Elizabeth.
Yeah, we do agree.
Okay, so you guys are in agreement. Okay, so interesting question I have based on it. Everybody went domestic violence, great, number one, perfect, lovely. Is domestic violence a choice between life or death, or is it the least harm? Under which principle does it fall in? Remember, ethics is not about emotions. Ethics is about the principle at play. Right?
Life. Life
Is
and
it
death.
life? Life and death.
And equality as well.
And equality.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, great.
I think
And
I think
then-
the first five things it like life, equality, autonomy, least harm, and quality of life falls under it.
Okay, interesting. And then when you look at something like daycare, right? Which right is daycare falling under? Which right does daycare fall under?
Autonomy and quality of life.
Quality of life.
Okay. And which
Autonomy.
right does contraception fall under?
Autonomy.
Autonomy.
Autonomy. So we would have contraception being autonomy. Domestic violence, you have equated it with life. Daycare under quality of life, yes?
Nick, with the daycare center, I think you could actually argue as well that it has to do with autonomy.
Explain this. I
Autonomy,
agree.
yeah, autonomy of the sense that parents would be able to make their own decisions without having to be restricted by having a child.
Okay, it's a different stance. We agree for different reasons. All right, so what the purpose of this activity is this, right? Number one, everybody makes the same mistake of falling into an emotional understanding of a problem, all right? However, I'm going to ask that when you're faced with ethical dilemmas, the first question you ask yourself is, what is the right that is affected? If you find yourself saying, no, it's 2 or 3 of these rights, then you know that you've emotionally become involved, right? You're applying a secondary set of values to your primary set of ethics. Does that make sense? Right? If you've got the first one, like it's this one, what's that one? Then you're on the right track. Okay, so that's the first step that I want to have in there. Apart from that, most of you guys had it right. Again, it's ethics. There is no exact complete right, but I'm happy with the programs you guys have chosen.
Are you saying?
Hmm.
Are you saying that each scenario only gets one ethic?
The
And it's
easiest
not
way to
like a
do it
whole-
is to reduce it to one ethic.
That'll be the primary ethic.
The primary ethic that is involved. That's why I asked you with gender violence, how did we equate that to life and death rather than quality of life? Right? And then what's the primary ethic there? When I say gender violence, what is the right that it impedes on as such? Make sense? I'm not saying any answer was wrong. There was no wrong answer per se, because
Makes
ethics
sense.
are just like
However,
that.
However, like if you just take the life and death one with regards to domestic violence, every part of it could be important. I mean, she's being domestically violated because there's inequality. And with inequality comes no autonomy. And with that, she's going to get khamur, so it's least harm. And when she
But
gets
if you had to
hiding,
pick
then it's
one,
quality
which
of
one would
life.
it be?
Obviously, it's life and death.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
So Nick, can I ask the question? Would the one that you pick always be the highest one that it in? Because that would make sense to me. So if
the highest,
for example, the highest right, would that be the primary right every time?
So the highest, I don't understand the question.
Okay, so if a program affected autonomy and affected quality of life,
you always choose autonomy.
You would always choose the higher value. Always
choose the higher value because this is the hierarchy of ethics. All right.
Okay, so the primary one is always the highest one.
The highest one. You always go for the highest one. All right. That is the safest way to make that decision. It's the best way to make that decision. Okay, perfect. I have some terrible news for this class, and for Lisbeth actually. So I need you guys to pay a bit more attention here. The next lesson, we are going to take you kicking and screaming into your qualification. All right. So I need to know who is going to conduct the next class. One of you is going to conduct, well, 2 of you actually are going to conduct 30 minutes each of the next class. All right, Shakir, you're up. Okay. And who else? Jackie, thanks for volunteering. Okay, perfect. So we have Shakir and Jackie that will present 30 minutes each. This is the challenge. All right. You need to pick a program or a social issue that you would like to address and inform the class on. All right. I'm not going to tell you which one it is. Maybe you choose drug abuse. Maybe you choose child-headed households. Maybe you just choose education awareness plans, wherever it is. You are going to prepare a 30-minute lesson for us. 25-minute, 20-minute is perfectly fine, where you tell us about the problem. In a slideshow, tell us the problem. Tell us what processes there are in place to solve the problem. What all do we need to know as if it's the first time we're hearing about this problem? And what is the solution that you propose, or what are solutions that are available? What's the problem? What are the dimensions of the problem? How are we going to address this problem? And what are the solutions that you propose or that are available? You are going to send this presentation to Lisbeth, right? Lisbeth is going to provide supervision on it, and she's going to give you feedback and ask you a few questions on it just to make sure you fully understand and that it's present worthy. Right? So you have to do this at least a week before your next class so that she has time to quickly read through it and make sure that you presented something that is logically sound. Right? And then you'll present it to us and we'll have a group discussion based on your issue from a social work perspective. Do we understand the assignment?
I understand if you just
Oh,
type
oh,
out
Shakir.
for
I-
us the problem, the dynamics around the problem, the solution, and what's the other part?
Yeah. So it's give me an understanding of the problem. If you're doing drug abuse, tell me
Can
what
I-
is
can I
drug
go again?
abuse? Yes.
The problem? You can't hear me.
No. Okay, we'll come back to you, Shakir. We'll give you a minute. We'll come back to you. Let's give you a minute. Jackie, you understand the assignment?
I do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And Elizabeth, I'm very sorry to throw you into the deep end there. I'm going to put Elizabeth's erudite email up for you. You will email her. And then I look forward to your class presentations. These are recorded. This goes into your portfolio because we need to get going on our qualification credits and everything that we need to do. And I'm looking forward to both those lessons. Then Bonnie and Nkosi Singapile, you are going to then present 2 classes after that. Okay, I'm giving you time to catch up on the work a bit, catch up with the social work material. So there's no pressure on you at the moment. You don't need to worry about it. You will get a chance to present. Okay?
Okay.
Perfect. So do not stress too much. Let them go first because they've already been here for about a year. So now it's afterwards, it will be your guys' turn. Okay, perfect. Any questions on this at all from anyone?
Shakir
Shakir,
posted
can
a
you-
question in the chat.
Oh, you guys are very good at this chat thing. Let's see. The dynamic, the problem, the dynamic, the solutions. No, that's it, Shakir. It's just give me an overview. If you were presenting a masterclass in helping me understand something, what would it be? So you'll start off by saying, drugs are a problem in South Africa. These are the drugs. These are the areas that are affected. This is why it is a problem. These are the programs that we already have in place. And this is the program that we could create that helps alleviate that problem. Okay, so in it, I'm looking at what you've created, how you've described the problem, and how you've taught the problem to us so that we're all learning a bit from each other and from our different value structures. Elizabeth, does that sound exciting for you? It is a correct answer.
So exciting.
Can you repeat the last part, please?
I
What you've
said,
created, how you've described it?
describe the problem, what solutions there are, and what program you would have that helps alleviate an aspect of that problem. Make sense?
Sharp.
Perfect. I look forward to seeing you guys at the next class where I get to be a student and ask nice questions and get to hear the feedback from everyone. Have a beautiful evening, everyone. Right. And I will see you guys in the next lesson. Goodbye.
Good night.
Night.